Welcome back. This is the TCM Excel Essentials Functions and Shortcuts session number 3. In this section, we're going to look at some of the more specialized functions in Excel. We're going to look at naming cells and talk about why that can be helpful. We'll do a couple pivot tables, and we'll do a bunch of if functions, which I think are among the most useful functions Excel has to offer. We'll also do a little bit of conditional formatting just to help you get some valid information out of the data that you're working with. So, naming cells. Why? There's a couple major reasons you might want to name cells. It does allow you to use the go-to function, so you can go quickly to certain areas of your spreadsheet. That could be helpful. If you are putting cell references into a function or into a macro, it also has content value then. The name of the cell tells the user what information is in that cell. So those are good reasons for that. And also, if you are giving your user the possibility of inserting or modifying your spreadsheet, the location of certain tables and data can change. If you have named the cell in a macro or in a function, it will always find it, even if it's been moved over or down a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to put a cell reference in, for example, into a macro, and that cell reference will remain static. So naming cells can be very helpful. Enough talking already. We want to practice using this stuff. I don't want to talk at you a ton. So we're going to go back to our Excel spreadsheet. We're going to go to the Specialized Functions tab, and we're going to do this list of things. We're going to do some naming. We're going to kind of navigate around using the different control keys, just giving you some practice again. We're trying to get that muscle memory. So I'm going to shift my share over to the spreadsheet, and let's dive in. So the first thing we want to do is to name our cells. Now, like I say, it gives you the opportunity to go to certain locations in your spreadsheet, which could be easier than other ways you could find stuff. So I'm going to go page up, and I'm going to switch across all these tabs back to our cover, and then I'm going to do Control Home, and that takes my cursor right up here to this top little section. If I look slightly above there, there's an empty cell, and I can name this field cover underscore sheet. You can't use any blanks in these naming. So cover sheet, there I am. I can do Control Page Down. I go to the next tab, Control Home, back to cell A1. This one I want to label Shortcuts. You can go through every single tab and name them. Next one, Page Down. Now it's already Control Home. It's already up in that corner A1 because I tend to leave my spreadsheets there anyway. It's just easier for the user. So you would go through and you'd name them all. Once you've done that, now you can use a Control G, and it's going to display everything that you've named in your whole spreadsheet. If you want to go straight back to our cover sheet, boom, there I go. If I want to go all the way to tab 16, I told you my story of the spreadsheet from hell that had so much data in it, it was so hard to figure out where to go and what to do. And naming your cells can help with that as well. Now, let's see, we did that. Formulas. If I need to work with those names, I've created them, and now I need to change them, edit them, add things, I can go back to my menus and to take a look at the data menu. So it's Alt A. Oops. The formulas menu, we're going to do data later. Alt M. And then I have all of these formulas. Name manager is number N. So it tells me everything that has a name, including the print area that's already been set for a couple of those pages. So I know what names are here and where their locations are. So I can edit, I can delete, I can do whatever I need to. Now, in the formulas menu, you have a whole bunch of really helpful references here. So if I'm not sure what formula I can use for what, you can do some drop downs here, and you can play around with an if formula or a not or what have you. You can click on that function. It's going to give you the little pop-up box. How do I use that function? What are the inputs? And then you can actually expand your understanding of what Excel can do for you just by spending some time looking at these different fields and just say, what is this? It could be interesting. Who knows? financial functions. So just a ton of things here. Mostly what I do is to use a name manager here, but there's lots you can do. So back to the other slide deck. That was just quick little navigation, reminding you how to use your function keys. Let's talk now about if functions. As I said, I think this is one of the most useful functions in Excel. If functions allow you to react to different conditions. Instead of just assuming the user will always do this or the data will always do that, you can say if the data in the cell is beyond a certain range, do one thing. If it's negative, do a different thing. If it's not working at all, do something else. So you can give nested conditions. You can have multiple conditions for one cell that then the output will be what you need it to be in a variety of circumstances. So if functions make your spreadsheets more automated, and that's what you want, right? You want the spreadsheet to do as much work as possible. I've mentioned in the cell that if you combine those with drop-down lists, which is in your data validation function, which we'll look at in a minute, then you really have controlled your set of possibilities so that when you write your if function, you have distinct conditions that may or may not occur. And so then your action that you want the spreadsheet to take is predefined. The logic of an if function, this is Visual Basic is basic programming language, is if, then, else. If a condition exists or doesn't exist or within a range, whatever that condition is, you put a comma sign, and then the next phrase is the then. Do this. If this condition exists or doesn't exist or what have you, take this action. Otherwise, you put another comma, else, do this other thing. You could do nothing. You could do a different, give an error message. You can have a different outcome. If, then, else. That's the way these things are built. And they can be used in a bunch of different ways. So we have not only the basic if statement, there's some if, count if, average if error, there's so many of them. We're only going to look at a few of them. That's one reason you might want to go to that formulas menu in Excel and try a few things out for yourself. One more thing to talk about, pivot tables. Pivot tables are awesome. Also, as I said in the spreadsheet from hell with the 16 tabs, and the poser in my department, he was using pivot tables to gather information and to develop very useful tables and summary that I didn't know how to do until he showed me. So pivot tables are great, especially when the data is variable. You don't know exactly what's going to be in there. So the pivot table will pull in whatever you want to summarize. If it's a sector list, if it is students' gender, if it's, I don't know what their major might be, things that you can't predict exactly what the output's going to be. That's perfect for a pivot table. You take your whole set of data and then you say, summarize everything for me. There are a couple of requirements for pivot tables. The data must have contiguous, unique headings. It's going to use those headings to develop the list of attributes that you're going to summarize. So if you set up your data correctly, the pivot tables can be really helpful. Okay, conditional formatting, data validation, other ways that you can make the output of your spreadsheet as user-friendly as possible. Conditional formatting, you can put in up arrows, down arrows, stop signs, happy faces, color coding is what I use mostly. All kinds of things to help the user interpret your data. And then data validation can limit the acceptable outcomes so that you get some error messages and such coming back that can help the user debug their spreadsheet. When you're working with big sets of data, you're going to have to find a way to get the information you want out of the data. When I learned how to use Excel, it was Vlookup and Hlookup were the tools for that job. If you know how your data is organized, you can put in a Vlookup formula that says, if you find this criteria, whatever you're looking for, go 5 rows over and you should find what it is. So if I'm looking for a student name, I want to find the grade in a class. I can say, go down the list, find the student name, go over 5 columns or 10 or 25 and find the grade for that class and tell me what it is. So you can search a huge range of data with a Vlookup or an Hlookup. The only difference between them is if you're looking down to get your output or if you're looking over to get your output. The trick on these ones, again, organizing your data correctly is really important. The identifier must be in the first row or the column of whatever range you're searching. Otherwise, it can't do its job. Nice thing relative to pivot tables, you can't have empty space in there. That's fine. It just says go over 20 columns or go down 15 rows. Doesn't matter if any of those are empty. These functions are being replaced by index and match, used together into a nested function. I don't use those myself, so I'm not going to talk about them, but that is the way things are going now. Vlookup and Hlookup are going by the wayside. All right, next thing, data analysis and reporting tab. We're going to go there. We're going to do 11 different tasks, and you're just going to practice, muscle memory. That's what we're after. So back to my spreadsheet. I'm just going to go right over to, well, maybe I'll just get over there, data analysis and reporting. I always start control home. I start at the top left. It's just easier. So I have a bunch of data. This is the TCM equity portfolio from a couple of years ago. It's an actual portfolio. I have ticker symbols, I have sectors, I have shares, price, market value, and I have the percent that each of those positions represents in the whole portfolio. So we're going to play with that data just to practice using our keystrokes and our formulas and that sort of thing. So the first thing, make column B not bold, and then center columns A and B. Well, I'm right here. I did control home to get at this first cell. I'm just going to move over once. I can do control shift down, and it stops because, again, my data is not contiguous here. I have empty space. Control shift down again gets me to the next set of data. Control shift again will get me to the bottom. If I did it one more time, you can't really see this, but it actually is going all the way to row 10,000, which is no good. So I went control shift up again, and my data is highlighted. And I can do control B, make it unbold. Fair enough. Go over one column. Same thing, control shift down. It went all the way this time because I have contiguous data. And control B, it's no longer bold. Now that I want to make both of those centered, I can go Alt-H, get to my home screen, and then I can do AC, and that would center my data. And again, just how I did that, Alt gives me my letters. I see that H is home, so I'm doing Alt-H. And then if I look at all those options, here's the center option, and the letters that go with it is AC. So Alt-H, AC. Eventually, you'll just get really, really fast with that. So we have done item number 1. Congratulations. Item number 2, use conditional formatting to find positions over the 5% limit in column F. Okay, I want the entire column to be formatted, so control shift down arrow gets me my whole column. Now I need to go to my conditional formatting. So where do I find conditional formatting? Alt, H, and conditional formatting, we can see here is L. So what do I want to do? Let me highlight cells so you can see there's a little H here. Oops, it went away now. I'll just have to use the keystrokes. Highlight cells if they are greater than 5%. So you can put 5% in the box or 0.05, whatever you want. And then you can do this drop down. What color do I want it to be? They have a few presets. I usually use them because it's easier. You can make it red. If it's over the limit, I want it to be red. Okay. Don't see anything. Control up. Ah, my first one is red. And now I'm just going to scan the whole column. And apparently they're sorted from high to low, looks like. So that's the only one over the limit. Easy to spot, very useful, conditional formatting. Careful with that though, if you use it too much, it takes up a lot of memory in your spreadsheet. So it can make your spreadsheet slow if you use it too much. Next one, find the location of the drop-down list used for the sector assignments in column B. What? I say go to cell B13. B13, go there. I got my drop-down. All right, so there is a list here. Where did it come from? I don't know. So let's go and check out the data validation. Alt, now this is not on your home screen. It's on your data screen, A, and then validation is V. Again, I'm getting it way over here, just so you can see where it's coming from. And then there's a couple of different choices. I want the simple data validation, so VV. Alt A, VV. This field is set to allow only the inputs that are in this list, which is found here at cell H15 to H25. Okay, let me go there. H15 to 25 is over here. I have deliberately omitted one of the sectors, which would be consumer and discretionary. It's not here. So all I have to do is, consumer discretionary. Now that's in the list, I'm going to Control I to get rid of it. I can go Control Home, get back up to the top. Now I want to add that validation here. So I highlight the sectors I want to add it to. I'm already in that menu, so I'm just going to click up with my mouse button. It says, what do you want to do? I want to make this section have to include only information in this list. So I'm just highlighting my list and then enter. Now if I click here, it's going to give me my list. So also a very handy tool. Normally when I'm using data validation, I'll put my lists off to the side someplace so that people don't see it. It kind of gets in the way. But now that it's there, you can click on consumer discretionary. Since I know that's the whole set, Control C, Shift Control down. It went one more too far, Control V, and now I've got my whole thing. Let's see. Okay, that's everything in that thing. Pivot tables are next. So pivot tables, put your cursor where you want the table to be, and then you do the insert. So Alt insert is your in, and then pivot table V. Okay, what range? I am going to use this. I'm going to show you something that's going to give you a problem. So I'm going to highlight my table over here. And then what location? It's going to put it where I left my cursor, so that's fine. I click OK. Oh, it's an error message. The pivot field name is not valid because I highlighted the whole columns, A through F. There's a problem with that because A, this first row is going to be the fields that my pivot table uses, and it doesn't have a name in every cell. There's a couple blanks. So I can't use the entire column. I actually have to go to the top there, Control Shift down, and now I've got a set of data with labels. Now if I hit OK, oh, there's already data in here. Do you want to replace it? Okay, sure. Now it's going to give me my pivot table, gosh, I don't know what you call that, box. What do I want to summarize? I want to summarize the sectors. So I'm just going to click on that. What do I want to know about the sectors? I want to know the percent. Now it automatically puts your first thing in this rows field and the next thing in the values field, and it defaults to sum. So you can do sum or count. If I want to change it or average, you can do lots of things. Value field settings, and sum, count, average, max, min, whatever I want to do. You can do lots of stuff. So I'll just keep it with sum. So once I've made those conditions, I can click out of there, and my pivot table should be right here. Now, I forgot to format my output. It looks like everything is 0. Well, actually, I want them to be percents, so I can do Alt Home, and I want to set it as a percent, which would be P. Now I can see stuff. Every time you click in your pivot table, it gives you your box again. All right, easy. Let's see, I wrote over some of my information, so I'm going to do this a little bit faster. We need sum if and average if, I think is what I wanted you to do. Sum if and average if. If statements equals sum if. Sum up what kind of range? I want to know the total of that allocation. All right, what's my criteria? Well, it needs to be just industrials. So I'm going to click there. And then, oops, I did that backwards. And then the sum range is F, sorry. The data, the entire data range is this whole thing, A through F. Or I can just do there, I can just do B, that'll be fine. Okay, so if you find industrials in column B, look up whatever is in column F. There you go. It's not formatted, so there you are. Now, the way I set my formula, Column B is always going to stay the same. I don't have to anchor anything because I use the entire column reference. Column F, same thing. It's always going to be the same. H is looking at this criteria, industrials. So I want that to be relative so that I can copy paste my formula down. So I'm not going to autofill it because it's going to go too far. So I'm just going to copy it down and it's going to be correct. So, interesting. Auto sum. I can't. It's not working. Help. No. It's not finding my range for some reason. Okay. I'll format that as a percent again. I'm not getting all my data. How come? Oh, it's not complete because I overwrote some of these other fields, so it's only picking up a few. Notice the conditional formatting. I already set this. If it's more than 1.5 times, so let's see what that is. Conditional formatting, manage rules. Tell me what's going on. If the cell value is greater than 25%, then make it red. That's actually not what I wanted. I wanted it to be more than 1.5 times the index value. So I can delete the rule and then I can change it, or I can edit the rule, manage rules, here, edit rule, and I can change it and not say greater than 25. I can say greater than 1.5 times something else. Cancel. Okay. Let's write an if statement. Oops, equals if, open parentheses. If anything in this column is greater than whatever criteria I set, I'll just use the 25% for now. I'm going to put 25%. Then give me a warning message. I'll put quotes in there. Sector out of compliance. Exclamation point. Close my paren. Sorry, close my quote, close my paren, and there you go. And I keep my relative references so I can copy this all the way down and it won't do anything at all. Oh, I forgot the else. If then else, if then, what if that's not the case? My favorite thing is to put 2 quotes that says just put a blank space. If then else, now I can copy it down and it doesn't do anything. The formula is here, but I told it if this field is greater than 25%, then give me my error message. Otherwise, just put a blank space there. I use that a lot. If statements. The other interesting thing about pivot tables versus SUMIF is that pivot tables only give you the information that exists in your data set. I have some sectors with no exposure. So I can capture them with a SUMIF because I'm just asking, tell me whatever's there. If there's nothing there, it gives you 0. Pivot tables, if the data is not there, you get nothing. So that's also a reason you might prefer a SUMIF to a pivot table. All right. Vlookup formulas. Okay. I want to find the sector total. So Vlookup. What's my criteria? Industrials. It has a unique identifier. That's really important here. What's my range? Where am I looking? I'm going to look over here. All right. And the next thing it wants to know is where is the output within my range? Well, if here's my criteria, that's row number 1, column number 1. My information is in column number 2. So I'm going to put number 2 into my formula. And then approximate or exact match. Back in the day when I was learning, I always had to put false in here in order to get the functions to work correctly. You may not need that anymore, but that's the way I learned. So the Vlookup function. What's your criteria? Where do I look for it? Where is it within that range? And then I always put the word false at the end. Notice now, this criteria, this table here is not anchored. If I don't anchor it, I cannot copy and paste it. So you want to be sure and use your F4 key. As I said before, my F4 key does not work properly. So I'm just using $sign. I want both the column and the row to be anchored so that no matter where I copy this, It's always going to look at that same range. Now I can copy it down. Okay. What if it finds nothing? If I look in the different range, let me look up here in my pivot table. I think that was what I intended to do. Look at my pivot table, change my range. I'm popping in here, getting rid of that. Instead, I want to look over here. I'm looking in my pivot table. I still am going to anchor it. Again, your F4 key does this automatically, but mine doesn't work. Okay, same output. It found its answer. I drag it down, and now I'm getting error messages because it doesn't have anything there. So let's add an if error to the front of that one. I'm making a nested function. If error, if the result of this function is an error message, put comma, so if then else, a 0, and then close my parentheses. So if error can make your spreadsheets neat because it just does what I said. If this function gives me an error message, in this case because it doesn't exist, just put a 0 in there instead. Now I can, again, I anchored everything so I can copy it. Now life is good. The last one we had here was to create a chart, but we're going long, so I'm not going to make you do that because we did that before, and that would be the end of that session. All right. What? That's all I was having you do this time around, but it's a lot. So if you want to take a pause and go through all of those different functions again, using your keystrokes again, getting comfortable navigating the spreadsheet, trying this stuff out, muscle memory. That's what you're after. And then we'll tie it all together in our last session with a mini case where you'll use a bunch of different things, but specifically around data validation. It gets a little bit complicated, so I set it up all by itself so your brains are fresh. So I'll see you again in session 4.